All right, we are live. And welcome back, everybody, to the Roofr Masterclass. I am your co-host, Pete, and my other co-host, Nick. And we are excited to have you guys back here on the Masterclass. Some great topics. I mean, we've just been talking about some awesome stuff. We've showcased the product and, transitioning now to try to help you guys out and see what we can do with our knowledge here at Roofr and, our experience. Nick and I were both in the industry and, now moving into the SaaS side of the business, the tech side, and, anything that we can do to help, we're here for. And, so that's what we're here for today, right, Nick? Going to talk a little bit about how we can help you guys kind of streamline things and standardize some processes and figure this thing out, right? Run a
My
better
new
roofing business.
my new favorite thing to say, standardize and standard operating procedure or standard operating processes.
I
Like
know.
those are my new favorites. I used to
Those are our
be
new ones.
the education and transparency guy, but this is the new thing for us.
This is the
And
new thing, right? Standardization. I like
it's
it.
great. It's so important nowadays, especially with everything going on, having multiple tool stacks that you're working with, and especially now more than ever on the dawn of a potential recession, we want to make sure that things are standardized so that we can get out to the customers quickly and make sure that we get them on a plan so that we could actually get them to build their roof and we don't lose out on potential revenue.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to dive into it today, but there's so many advantages to standardizing what you do, right? There's the customer experience that is drastically improved by having a good standard streamlined process. There's the employee experience. There's the new employee experience. Like, there's just so many things that can benefit from really dialing in this process and making it more streamlined and making it more functional and making it more effective. And there's just a ton of different ways that that we can do that. And some of them are very easy, some of them take a little bit, but I think it's a great a great way to kind of intro what we're going to talk about today and kind of dive into it a little bit here.
Really excited, and I already see some people in the chat. Shout out to Daniel from Hamilton, Ontario. Go Ticats! But a little CFL humor there, Pete. But keep on posting in there. We have Astawa manning the chat, so if you have questions or need anything, let us know. But really excited to talk about this topic with you.
Yeah, and this is definitely one that excites me. Kind of it prefaces a little bit. We talked about it on our
Mm-hmm.
live with Daniel at roofing.com the other day, and it prefaces what we're going to talk about, in a session that I have at RoofCon here next week. So, this is really a great kind of intro to that and a little teaser to that. And if you guys are going to be at RoofCon, definitely come hang out with us and, spend some time in there. And we're going to talk through this in a little bit more detail, but my background really lends me to this topic. I was in the industry. I was a management kind of guy, project management kind of guy, and then on the SaaS side of it, worked at a CRM, and really everything we did every day was around roofers and their process. So I love this topic. Like, this is
Yeah.
my bread and butter. This is where I like to live. So so I'm really excited about this. I was thinking coming into it, man, like Nick should be leading this and I should be answering all the questions, right? Like,
I don't know about
we
that. You're
should
the
be
system and
reversing the
processes
Batman and
guy.
Robin thing here. Like,
Yeah.
So. But no, really excited to talk with you about this one. I think it's going to be a pretty good one. So
Perfect.
I know we built some slides around it, that we just kind of want to run through just some stats and stuff like that. So I know Nick's going to share his screen on that. We're going to kind of talk through them. But like Nick said, if you guys have questions along the way, definitely go ahead and throw them in the chat there. Whoa, man, Jeffrey's all the way from Australia to check us out.
Oh, that's awesome.
Man, that is sick. That is awesome, man. I don't know what time it is there, but I applaud you for getting on.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't do that math in my head, but I don't know that time zone. But
I don't think it's
uh,
quick math, that's for sure.
no, but definitely impressed that you took the time to jump on. So yeah, to start it off, like, this is a quote from a contractor friend of Nick and ours. John Roche actually is the person who said this to me, just literally in passing in a conversation one day, and it has stuck with me. From the time he said it it's really kind of like a foundational statement, right? And he said, if you trust the process, you don't have to trust the employees, right? You don't have to rely on the people to figure it out. If you, as the owner, really trust what you're doing, right? If you trust the process that you've built, then everything else is going to fall in line.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to worry about, what everybody's doing. You don't have to micromanage. The process will take care of itself, and the people will fall into the process. And it really does so much to help the employees kind of figure out their way and their position and their responsibilities in that. When you have a process that's so sound, like I said, I'm a process guy. One of my favorite people in the industry, Aaron Trujillo, really spent a lot of time with him. He's a process guy. Shout out to Aaron. Haven't talked to him in a while, but the guy's just a monster when it comes to building out processes. If you ever need help with that. And, he just taught me so much about the process and how to set it up and how to approach it. And, it's 8 o'clock in the morning there on Friday. I love it,
That's
Jack.
so crazy to think about.
Crazy.
In the
But,
future.
yeah, he's in the future listening to that. That's awesome. But I mean, and that's a huge part of it, right? Like, building the process is really the key, right? And I'm sure, Nick, I mean, you've been in it for years and you've probably seen both sides of it, right? Like, you've seen companies that have an incredible process and seen what that's done for their for their business, and probably some that lack the process part of it, right?
It's crazy what a difference that can make. I think about like companies that I know, like you talk about MHI and John Broche and Ugly Roof, and how they have that process kind of set in stone so that they could hire at will, they could scale at will, they could build something, and again, they don't have to trust the employees because they could trust the process. I was at a conference sitting at a table with John Broche, and he just turned to me and turned his phone and showed all these jobs that were being sold back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We were in Florida. He was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I was like, man, that's so cool. Like everybody's just kind of running an autopilot. He's just like process. And so that just makes everything big difference. And back when we were in the marketplace days and we were working with contractors across California, Florida, Ontario, Canada, it was very, very evident on the ones that were successful with the marketplace are the ones with great processes. There's a guy just not too far away from me. His name's Norbert from Breno Roofing, runs a fantastic company out of the GTA into Hamilton and around there. And Richard, our CEO, and I used to call him a robot because his processes were so streamlined that he can get work done that was like 6 people's worth of work done, and just him and his sister and his brother. It was 3 of them that ran it. So it was unbelievable how it worked. Conversely, there were so many times I met an amazing roofer, really good person, really good ideas, really strong like work ethic, and wanted to build out, but you could see was failing over and over again. And why? They didn't have processes. It was taking too long to get measurements out, too long to get quotes out, too long to kind of schedule the crew. And then you would see homeowners phoning, seeing like, why aren't they at my house yet? What's going on? What's happening? No processes in place. And guess what? Unfortunately, those companies are no longer around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what a lot of people don't realize is once you get that process becomes the foundation of the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's where your core values live. It's where, everything that your business entails lives inside of that process. And then from there, as an owner, it becomes very easy to make changes, because now it's like the changes you're making are not like, oh, we got to find a new CRM. We got to completely change the way we quote. Like, that's not the case anymore. Now you're talking about like tweaking things, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
talking about doing minor improvements. Like I look, we will probably use John a lot in this because I love John's process at MHI, but I look at the things that he does and the things that he's able to try and the tiny tweaks that he makes or the little improvements that he makes that, correspond to like his customer experience and how he is doing little things internally to improve the experience for the customer and make the life of his employees easier. But it's because his process is so sound that
Mm-hmm.
he can make those tiny adjustments or even run little tests in there, right? Because it's not going to hurt the process that he has in place, right? So it's it really is the foundation of the company. And I think, how many times do we, not even, meet a roofer that hasn't even really figured that process out and is trying to employ tech or is trying to hire people or is talking about scaling, right? And then, how do you do all those things if the process is not sound first?
Yeah, it's super important, and what's really cool, just to give John one more plug, I think like he might owe us a dinner after this, maybe, but to give him
We
one
might
more
owe him
plug,
one.
yeah, exactly. He we'll both buy each other dinner. It'll be a wash. But even with Ugly Roof, one of the craziest things about his product, Ugly Roof, is when you buy into that franchise, that they actually give you those processes for your company because they've tried, they tested it, they know it's true, and they can kind of build out. And to kind of going from a process master to that and passing it off to you, like the value that you get on that is just, it's not even tangible. Like it's so good.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to what we have on the next slide, which is the challenge that I give everybody on this call. And, I used to challenge everyone that came onto the CRM when I was there is, can you put your process down on paper?
Hmm.
Right. And can you really, like, if you had to sit down right now and write out your process of like a customer's journey, right? From the time a customer comes in, where are you getting your leads from? How are they coming in the door? Where does it go from there? Right? How does it flow? Could you write all that down? Like, and does it make sense? Right? Could you easily convey that? Like, if I asked Nick, what's his process? Could Nick easily tell me, like what his process is, and would it make sense to me? Right? Because if it doesn't make sense, then how's it going to make sense to an employee? How's it going to
Yeah.
make sense to, that someone that's trying to understand it? Like, let's say you're trying to employ a piece of tech and get it up and running. Like, I think back to the CRM days, right? And to share a quick story, I think there was a group of guys, they were younger guys, and they had started a roofing company and they were growing and they were like, man, we want to scale. We're going to get onto the CRM. They got onto the CRM, they signed up for it, and they went to use it, and it just epically failed on them. Like, just did not work, right? And they came back and they're like, we need to cancel our subscription. This doesn't work for us. We're gonna go find another CRM. And we're like, okay, like, kind of is what it is. And then, a couple months go by, they end up hooking up with Aaron Trujillo that I
Hmm.
mentioned there. And he's a process guy. Like, that's what he does, right? So he goes into their business, he takes a look at what they're doing, and he says, your process is completely broken. This is what we're going to do. We're going to start over and we're going to map this out. And funny part about it is, like, a year later, they came back to the CRM and they said, look, like, first of all, we want to apologize because it wasn't your software. It was our process that was broken.
Yeah.
And second of all, we realized that once we had the process in place, the CRM worked perfectly, right? Like, it actually flowed perfectly because now we had the process in place and we could put it down on paper. We could transfer it to a digital version inside the CRM, and it made sense and it was easy to figure out and scale it in there and train new people to use it. And so, I think that that's, the first step in that is, can you even relate your process? Like, can you write it down? Like, go, like, literally go sit down at night and one night and try to write your process down and take a look at it. Like, because there's so many things glaring things that'll show up when you do that, right? Bottlenecks. Where are there holes in the process, right? Like, where are there bottlenecks in the process? Where are there potentially, like, is there too much going on in your process? Like, that was one that we often saw, right? We see it today, I think, even in the sales process. Like, you ask somebody what their sales process is and they start telling you all these things and you're like, whoa, that's like a lot of stuff going on, right? Like, that's going to take a long time to train somebody to do that, or to get someone to adopt that process is going to be difficult, right? And I think that we struggle with being a little bit too granular sometimes, right? Like, we look too deep into it and we build this process that has way too many steps, and that causes us to be, like, as an owner or as a manager, to be in a situation where we have to completely micromanage it now, right? Because we've created way too much stuff going on for our team to really stay, on task, right, Nick?
Yeah, and don't even just like, if we think outside of it, not just like an ownership perspective and how many extra tasks, like how a poor process can actually affect your day to day and your salespeople and your team's day to day. But think about it from your homeowners' perspectives. So, like, your clients are out there and they're getting like a situation where You call in for a quote, they then call and they do a measurement, and then they come back and they do photos, and then they come back and they send out a quote, and they come back and they do samples. Just even from that perspective, you can tell that that's broken. Imagine the homeowner having to take time each time or make sure that their home, maybe they don't want people on their property without you there. That's the importance of a process where you could, even from a sales standpoint, if you could streamline that, selfish plug here for Roofr, and being able to like create a job, create a customer, create an instant estimate, and then order a measurement, build proposal, send it out, and then go out and meet. That's a whole different story where it's just like one visit, one thing, it's streamlined, it's beautiful there. Your business is no different than having that homeowner deal with 6 different meetings. Why, for one lead or one job, are you going to have 20 different entry points? You should have it be able to write it down on a piece of paper, real simple, that you can go, okay, lead comes in, order report, create company cam, take photos, inspect, build proposal, hand it off, view count, go, workflow starts. And then from production, sign quote, order material, schedule pickup, all that. And if you have that in a very streamlined flow, not only are you going to get more work done without having headaches, you're going to be able to hire more people. It's just going to be a better experience for the homeowner, for you, your employees. And at the end of the day, the most important part, your bank account. It just makes, that's what you're in business for. You're not in business to waste money. You're in business to make money. So streamlining something is going to give you more time in the day to allow you to do more with what you have. I one quick story, because we're on the story train over here. I'll never forget. I was talking with Corey Combs from South Shore Roofing, and he was saying he's a big process guy too, and he's got things really lined in. He's very, very smart, very, very good business owner. He was saying that typically he's got X amount of sales reps, and yeah, Mark, I'll put those points back up for you as well. He's got X amount of sales reps. He's got X amount of leads that he knows that they could properly, and the key word is properly, handle in a 1 week's time. So it's like 8 or 9 leads. I can't remember the exact number, is how many they could properly service, where they're giving the right amount of attention to the customer, to the job, to the project, and making sure nothing gets missed and that the customer is taken care of. By streamlining that process, he was already lined in with it, like he already had a good one. By streamlining it with something like Roofr, he didn't have to hire more sales reps. They had more time in the day to take on more leads, increasing revenue for the company, helping out more customers, and then ultimately those sales guys are making more money as well with a tool. And that's the importance that process can bring to you, your homeowners, and your staff.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point here, Nick. It's something that you mentioned a few times in there, and it's kind of like in my mind, the next step, right? Like, okay, we've written down our process. Take a look at that process and decide, if I was a customer in this process, how would I feel, right? Like, would this be a process? Would this be a journey that I would want to go through
That's
as
it.
a customer, right? Like, does this make sense? Or is somewhere in this process going to end up being a bad experience for me? Because it's like you said, maybe we're taking on too many leads. Maybe we're not able to run enough appointments. Maybe we have a bottleneck at production, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it may be, you can kind of, once you have it on paper, you can see it, right? And like I always say, imagine that process from the customer's point of view. And if I was the customer, would I be satisfied with this? Or is there something in there that I'm going to be like, okay, this is going to crap, right? Like, this process is
Mhm.
falling apart, right? Or something, hey, maybe we tweak it, and then we can figure out, like, is there a more streamlined way to do this? Or could we employ some tech that streamlines how we quote?
Automates.
Right.
Yeah,
Or
like
automate something. Like, there's just so many tools out there now. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a tool, but the tools, obviously, once you have the process in place, the tools help you streamline, right? That's what the
mhm.
tools are for. The tools are not, you don't build this is an Astawa line, and I'm going to give him mad props for this line here. But a, a tool, you can't build a process around a tool. You have to use the tool inside of the process, right? Like, a tool is not going to fix a broken process.
Mm.
right? Like it's going to help a good process, but it's not going to fit. It's not a band-aid, right? Like it's not going to fix a process that has issues, right? So, and I think we even have a slide around that later on,
Yeah.
but but the reality of it is like that is a very true statement. Like if the process is not correct, if it's not working properly, like it's not going to, like, all the tools in the world aren't going to fix it, right? So um, I think, and it starts with the next slide, Nick, which is leads. Like, obviously, that's a huge one for everybody, right? Like, that's the top of the funnel. That's the start of the process. The process really can't happen until we get leads in the door, right?
Yeah.
So, how are those leads coming in? How are we creating leads? How are we generating leads? I think if you go to the next slide, then Nick, there's a great stat on it, right? Just so you guys realize that it's not a problem just in your company or something that you may struggle with. 61% of the companies out there that do sales rank lead generation as their top challenge, right? So, which makes perfect sense. I mean, it's tough to find leads sometimes, right? And there's a million different ways to get them, but what are the most effective ways to do it, right? There's so many different schools of thoughts around this. I think you did a fantastic, um, webinar with Chris over at Lead Scout on this, Nick, that I'm sure you can talk a little bit too about scouting versus canvassing. And
Hmm.
I did one podcast not that long ago with Ruben from Active Prospect, a great dude, and he talked about like lead organization and some of the tools that if you guys haven't watched that one, definitely check it out if you have any questions about leads, because that dude's just like like a genius around leads and how to generate them and how to organize them, and he just had some great insight into what are some things to avoid when you're looking to generate leads, like what are some tools that maybe shy away from, and maybe some of the things that you want to look to that can help you generate some better leads. But when it comes to leads, though, one of the things that I like to talk about is there's lead gen, right? And we can do all kinds of stuff. We can stick a sign in the front yard, we can wrap our trucks, we can do door hangers, we can have guys out there knocking doors or scouting, right? But at the end of the day, the real challenge is, how do we capture those leads? Right? Like, how are those leads getting in the door? How are they getting into our CRM or into our funnel, or getting into our sales process? And then how are we addressing those leads? Like, how are we qualifying those leads? Like, are those leads just random phone numbers that we're calling, like very much a cold call situation, or do we know some information about them, and like, are they profiled in a way, like, are they qualified, and there's tools out there, shameless plug for our instant estimator. One of the things that I love about our instant estimator is it's not a lead gen tool, it's a lead capture tool, because it captures the information that is crucial to being able to qualify these leads, right? Like, it's a great tool to be able to profile these customers and have such a more educated conversation with them. It's going to be so much better of an experience for them when you call them and all this information already. Their timeline, what they've got going on with their roof, if there's an issue, right? Their sense of urgency, whether they need financing, what their financial situation is. Like, imagine having all that information up front and not having to do exploratory calls, not having to do an inspection to find all these things out that you could have found out in 30 seconds because they went and filled out your instant estimator, and you're capturing all that information, like, right, Nick? I mean, it's just an amazing tool, and it's not the only one. I mean, there's other things in the industry too that can help with that. Like, I think of Ruben's Active Prospect, it's kind of a lead organization platform as well. And,
Hmm.
but like, our tool obviously is so clean and easy to use, but like, having that information up front is a game changer, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple points that I want to touch on here. Is there's not one answer. And for you to have a successful lead capturing system, you're going to need to implement multiple. Having something on your, and again, to go back to like shameless plug, why we've changed our instant estimator from a widget to a shareable link is because you could start to do that with multiple avenues. You could have it on your website, you could text it out. I talked to someone yesterday who posted it into the Nextdoor app, like the Facebook groups, text it out to people, put it in their videos and the ad branding it there, click down for a quote in 30 seconds. And at the end of the day, you're capturing that information. So you could pair it with canvassing, with scouting, and everything else. So being able to do multiple things is where you're going to make sure that you're generating enough. Because we started off the webinar here with a sports analogy or a sports talk, bringing it back. Sales is about numbers. The more cracks at the bat you're going to get, is that the more that you're going to close. You think about like a 300 hitter is a Hall of Famer in baseball, like career 300. That's 30%. That's what like an average close rate is as well. So you're going to want to keep those numbers up for amount of opportunities that come in and be able to capture as much information. You know, you have a website, Edgar, we know that you use SEO, but how are you capitalizing for those people that are coming to your website? You're ranking high, that's fantastic, but they're on your website and what are they doing? Looking at your beautiful pictures, your nice videos and stuff, great for branding, but let's capture their information. So having something that captures it is going to be a big difference. And I think the other thing too that you need to bring in is service. After you've captured them, what are you doing in your service, in your process to get that lead out the door? There are so many times that you talk to customers and you talk to so many different contractors out there that their lead to quote rate is abysmal, 15, 20%. And they're like, well, like some of them are door kickers. Great. Why don't you quote them? Like if you have a system and process in place where it doesn't cost you money to go out there, to drive out to the house and get up on their roof, you think that they're habit, tire kicker, but you're not sure. Measure it out on something that's easy, like a DIY, build a proposal in seconds and send it out and watch those views turn on. Those are the things that you can increase your averages, because some of those tire kickers are going to go with you because of your service, your process, your expertise, your education, your transparency. You could have that all flown out there. So you got to make sure, not only if you are going out there to capture the leads, that you're doing something with them in a realistic time. You can't wait 2 to 4 days to get someone out of quote anymore. I ordered something on Amazon 2 days ago. It's still not here. I'm losing my mind. First of all, I thought I got scammed, but like I didn't. I was just like, why isn't he here already? If someone's roof is literally leaking inside there, they want answers now. They don't want to wait. They're going to find somebody else who's going to give them the answer now. So be that person that you could service your community with those captured leads.
Yeah, I mean, there's a stat that I don't think we have a slide around it today, but it says that if you respond to a lead within an hour of them coming in, you're 7 times more likely to close them.
It's crazy,
right? And that speaks to like one of my favorite phrases, which is speed to lead. And like, how are you getting to those leads as quick as possible? Because for 2 reasons, right? Like, obviously, it's a great experience from a customer standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. So I am more likely to probably go with you because I'm like, man, like in my mind, right, as a customer, if you're responding to me that quickly, I'm like, wow, these guys are on their shit. Like, they know what's going on, right? Like, they're on top of things. Like, I literally just filled this out. Like, I literally just filled out their instant estimator. They're already hitting me up. Like, wow, they've got a hell of a process. And and keep in mind that doesn't mean you have someone sitting in the office all day, like waiting, right, to pick up the phone. Like, there's all kinds of tools out there that can automate that process to where the second that person hits the button, it kicks them back an email and puts them into a campaign and, gets them rolling, and you look like a rock star, and it's all automated. Right. And then, when they respond, now you're having a one-on-one conversation, but to Nick's point, it weeds out the tire kickers because you're not having to spend that time, like actually sitting by a phone or, potentially hitting that person up. So it takes care of it for you. But, the other side of that is with the speed to lead. My favorite thing about it is, imagine being the first person in the door. Like Nick said, imagine being able to jump on that person and get them a lead and educate them, or get them a proposal and educate them around like your services and your company and all of that. Guess what? Everyone else that comes in the door behind you is getting compared to you at that point.
Yeah.
Right? Like everyone in the door, right? Like everyone's proposal is going to get put side by side with your proposal. Everyone's pitch is going to get compared to your pitch, right? So you've got a leg up now, because now, rather than coming in and having to compete with the guy before you, you are the guy before them, right? Like they're coming in and competing with you. Like, they've essentially, the guy's saying like, all right, already got a quote. I've already got a great pitch. This guy educated me. He told me what he was going to do. He walked me through the process. I feel really confident with him. I know a lot about his company now. So now the next guy in the door, I'm like, yeah, prove it. If you're better than this guy, prove it. Right. So it's just a great tool all the way around, working on with that speed to lead mentality. The quicker we can get there, the quicker we can make this stuff happen, the more likely we are to win the job, and the more likely we are to be compared to the competition and recommended down the road, right? Like it's just, it improves the process for everybody, for us internally, but also for the customer.
Yeah, and I go back to like the marketplace days when we were in Roofr, and I see a guy in here, Yolamo Molina. If that's the same guy, he was on the marketplace as one of our contractors. So Joseph, if that's you, shout out. But when the speed to lead thing, it's crazy because back then you would have a lead come in, and I would call them within 2 minutes, and their mind would be blown. They'd be like, "What do you do? I'm still on the site. Like, how is that even possible?" It's like, "Good. What can I help you with? What's the problem with your roof?" And they're just like, "Okay." And then when the quotes come in and you're comparing apples to apples, they're like, "Well, your service has been excellent, your education's been there, and everything's lined in." And it is him, by the way. That's awesome. What's up? Yeah, and he experienced it. Like we would close a lot of jobs together because of that service and expertise. And when they saw that happening, it was a huge relief for that homeowner because they're not used to buying a roof. It's like, especially if you're not in a storm market, this might be their first and only roof that they ever bought. So like give them that experience and that comfort, and know what's going to happen is they're going to go back with us. Like you're going to end up getting it with it. So it's going to clean it up so much there.
Yeah. And I think that, it's such a good piece here to transition now into kind of like the second half of this, which is, my favorite piece. And one of the things that Aaron taught me is the next slide here, Nick. Can your business handle 100 new customers? Let's say 100's a lot, right? Let's say 50, right? Let's say 25. Like if right now today you got 25 or 50 new leads or 100 new leads, could your business handle it? Or
Mhm.
would you be what's the number that you think your business would be completely overwhelmed? Right. And I think that that's a good way to look at it. Like how quickly could you scale? How quickly could you respond to 100 new leads coming in the door? Right. Or, like let's just say like one of your lead sources explodes, right? Like let's say you add instant estimator. There you go. 100 new leads, right? Like, I'm
It's
not
coming.
guaranteeing 100 new leads from the instant estimator, by the way, but I am saying that it could definitely help move in that direction, right? So don't hold me to that. But I think that it's a great point, Daniel. Like, can you manage their expectations? Like, could your team support it? And I think that this goes to one of the main points that Aaron taught me about process, and it was everyone thinks of process around sales,
Mhm.
right? Everyone thinks I got to improve the process and the experience for the customer around the sale. And what you lose sight of is if I do everything in regards to the sale, that's great. But what if I start closing all these people? Like, what if that 30% goes to 45% conversions, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Now, all of a sudden, I've got this influx of jobs. What if my process on the production side is broken? So one of the first things that Aaron said he always did when he went in, and now this guy was a guru, right? And it was a piece that I loved about him, is that he said, go in, and fix the production process first, right? Like make sure your production is a well-oiled machine. It
Mhm.
can handle anything you throw at it and then work backwards, right? It's the complete opposite, I think, of the mindset that we often think about, right? Like, my first thought would be, hey, let's figure out how we streamline sales to make more sales, or let's put more sales guys out in the field because that's going to drive more business in the door. Or how do we spend money on, more SEO or more marketing sources to get more leads in the door, right? The reality of that is that's all great stuff, but it's only great if you can manage the expectation, like Daniel said. And if you get down the road and you get to, the production end of it, and all of a sudden the process is broken or completely overwhelmed,
Mhm.
then the customer experience just went completely in the tank, right? And you've lost them at that point, and you haven't managed that expectation. And it's going to affect a lot of things. It's going to affect your reputation. It's going to affect your future sales. It's going to affect the customers that you have, and having to deal, like, none of us want to deal with angry customers. I mean, it's part of the job. It's going to happen from time to time, but we definitely don't want a bunch of them lining up to call us and bitch us out. Right. So
Yeah.
it's like these are all things that we can avoid if the process around the production is sound, right? And then we
Yeah.
back into the other pieces. Like I always say, start in the middle and work out, right? Start in the middle, manage the production, get the production sound, and then let's work out to, how are we going to invoice these people? How are we going to sell these people, right? Like all these things, right? So what are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Yeah, the production is such a good spot to start with the process, because if your production is lacking, your work is lacking, your quality is lacking, then the reviews are going to lack. And do you have a business anymore? You don't. You don't. So if you get that lined in, you make sure that your crews, your steps, your processes are lined in there. So when's the material being delivered? Is it rooftop delivery or ground delivery? Do we have a power ladder if it's a ground delivery? How do we set up everything around like for tarping protection? And then how many days is this going to take? Am I going to be on time? Am I communicating this with the customer? If that part is there, that's a great start, and you could start growing and be able to take on, say, 100 new customers. We got, who is it? We have, I know Joseph, and I think Daniel was the other. Ontario. 2018 in Ontario had the biggest windstorm in a century. I will tell you this, I was working with my dad at the time. That was hell, because that was like 200 customers coming in. And my dad's system, super streamlined, super processed. You couldn't hand in the front end because we didn't have a measurement tool to kind of help out. So once you have your process and your production done, where's your front end? Because you don't want to do all that work and sell all those jobs and fail on the back end. But also on the front end, when you do have a storm event or you do have something that booms, like the incident estimator, click, click. Someone asked about the gutters and stuff. We could chat after. I could definitely show you some ways that it could work. But when you have those like high volume of leads coming in, and again, they want answers now, especially if it's a storm event, they need answers now. You can't be driving out to every job. You're not going to be able to do that. Your phone's going to be running off the hook. You're not going to be able to have time to sleep. You're not going to be able to measure it. So finding a system and process for your sales, for enabling you to get out in front of jobs faster, to measure them faster, to quote them faster, and schedule them faster. So you're talking the end-to-end process here. I was doing so good with process,
You were
Pete.
doing
I
awesome.
was
That was
doing
the
really
first
good.
one.
That was the first one.
The
But
first
the
process of the day.
yeah, if you get the process of everything lined in like that, then you have an end-to-end system and you can't lose. Bring on the customers, bring on the jobs. That's how we build up, and you don't have to worry about it. And like Yolamo said in the chat there, you don't want to scale too quickly without that process, because you will fail. That's what I saw in California a lot, and in Florida some, when we were doing that marketplace. Really great people with really great ideas. Busted. I am busted. Really great ideas end up failing and regressing in their company and ruining their good name, because they had that shiny object syndrome. They're like, I want that new thing, and they went for it without lining in that process.
Yeah, and I think that leads kind of into our next set, which is like, when we're talking about leads, right? And we're talking about how we're going to generate leads, and we're talking about our process and how it feeds our reputation. Along the lines of like the next couple of slides here, Nick, it's like so many people think big, right? And I think they miss the fact of like, I have my real estate license. Like that's something that I did on the side, right? And I've had it for a couple of years. But one of the first things they teach you in real estate is, hey, you want to become a good realtor, start in your own backyard, right?
Mm.
Start with your neighbors, start with your friends, start with your family, right? Make those people champions of you as a real estate agent, right? Or as a roofer, right? And then let them spread the word, right? Because that's how it grows, right? But become that neighborhood guy. And I think, I look at some of these roofers and you see like some fantastic things going on. Like in my mind, Nick, I think right off the bat of like TC Backer, right? Ty
Yeah.
Backer, and all of the stuff that they do for the community, right? Like they are not just visible on the roof, but they're also visible in the community doing like other stuff, right? They do
Mhm.
food drives. I just saw them. They just did like a diaper drive or something like that to help some local families get some stuff. And you know what I mean? Like they're keeping their name like top of mind by just being the neighborhood roofer,
Yeah.
like being the guy. Like I was telling Asawa earlier, like we have this Facebook page in our town, right? And people often, like, everybody in town's on there. Our town's super small, and everybody in town's on the same Facebook page, right? And they use it to like communicate about what's going on in town and things like that. And one of the things that comes up in there, probably I'd say once a week or every week or two, is, hey, looking to do some work on my roof. Who's the roofer that you would recommend, right? And there's a guy in town whose name comes up in there every time because he's the neighborhood roofer, right? Like he's the guy that everybody knows. They know of him. He's a local guy. He lives in town, but he has a phenomenal reputation. His process is good. He does things really well. Everything is clean. Like his crews are really professional. He knocks things out quickly. He gets on jobs fast. Like he has just an impeccable reputation, and he's a local guy. And because of that, people love him. And I can tell you that, I see roofing jobs going on in town all the time. And I would bet you 70% or more of the roofing jobs that happen in town here are done by him
Yeah.
because he's winning business just based off of the fact that the neighborhood knows him. The whole neighborhood knows who he is.
And if you support the neighborhood too, you're doing things for like charity drives. You're doing things like helping like the Chamber of Commerce. Is that a thing in America? Chamber of Commerce?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was like worried that I just said something very Canadian
No.
that's only here. So like if you're doing something with like the local town and stuff to help out, food drives, anything like that, be that person who like, I embody this neighborhood. This neighborhood is mine. So if anybody does try to get it in there, they're getting pushed out by not you, by the neighborhood. This is your town and own it. So that's the best way to answer that question. Does the whole neighborhood know you? Yes, they should know you.
Yeah, and I think that leads right into the next slide, which kind of takes us back to that lead gen comment of,
Mhm.
you know, how are you getting your leads? This is an interesting stat, right? Because this is a general sales stat. 14% of companies stated that customer referrals are their top channel for lead gen. So 14% of their leads are coming from referrals. I can guarantee you, based on my experience with roofers, that in the roofing industry, this number is way, way higher than 14%. Would
Yeah.
you agree, Nick?
Yeah. It's like, I talked to a guy yesterday. I was like, where are you getting your leads from? He's like, oh, well, I have Google, I have SEO, I have the Nextdoor app. He goes, but like, I would say 90% come from referrals. And I was just like, yeah, makes sense. Like it's roofing.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
not, again, something that a homeowner is going to be going through often. So the best way to look for it is through referrals, because I don't know if everybody knows this, and kind of like earmuffs if you're sensitive to this, as you're very proud roofers. Roofing is one of the most hated industries by the public. They do not trust us. There's a reason back in the day, there's some shady characters in it. We are different. We are actual new age roofers that are here to actually help out. And we're still at the bottom of that list. They do not trust us, along with like door-to-door salespeople. And guess what? Roofers can be also door-to-door salespeople. So that's actually from the Better Business Bureau information. So that's why they're asking people. They're asking people to find out.
That one's on you, Nick.
Yeah, I know. Well, as a roofer myself, I can admit. But um, that's a big difference there. And as that being known and being a pervasive thought throughout the consciousness of homeowners, they're going to ask for someone that they've seen someone else have a good experience with. So again, having that referral base in your neighborhood is everything.
Yeah, and I think, so it's great. I think that it's so funny when I saw this number. First thing I said to Estelle was like, "Oh, that's got to be general sales because that's way off the roofing industry." Like,
How is it
I
only
remember,
14% of the companies that say that's their top? Like it should be all of your companies. It should be 100% of the companies says
yeah. I mean,
referrals is the top.
yeah. I mean, I know roofing companies. I mean, I worked with roofing companies that was where all of their leads came from.
Yeah.
100% of their leads coming in the door came from word of mouth, from them doing business, so much of that is their reputation. So, kind of tying all this together, right? If 80% or 90% of like that guy you talk to, right? If 90% of his leads are coming from referrals, how clean do you think his process is? That he's able to maintain that reputation over the years and be able to keep that word of mouth funnel just constantly referring in business. Some of
Yeah.
that's probably repeat customers. Some of that is people probably recommending neighbors and family members and excuse me. But like to be able to maintain that reputation and remain and retain that quality of business, he has to have an incredibly sound process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and I think that leads kind of to our next one and the question that we get so many times around software is I want to scale. I want to scale my business. The whole reason I'm coming to, I'm looking for software and I'm looking for a better way to do this is because we want to grow. Well, yeah, everybody wants to grow, right? Like we want to make more money. We want to be a bigger business most of the time. I mean, some people are happy where they're at, but most people would like to grow and expand their business. So, how do we do that? And it leads back to the very beginning. It ties all this together of you gotta have the process has to be airtight, right?
Yeah.
Like it has to be just running like a well-oiled machine, or scaling is going to do nothing but cause it to completely crumble on itself, right? And I think that's the mistake that we have so many times, is that we try to scale a business with a process that's not complete or that's broken or that's just unorganized, and it creates more problems than anything else, right? It's like puts us in a bad spot. So before you talk about scaling, and before everybody wants to scale, and I get it, and it's a great thing to do, and obviously like it's part of it's part of the business, right? Like there comes a time when the business matures that we want to grow it, but make sure that you are, that you really have it dialed in before you do that. And I think like to kind of bring it back, start with your process, start with your production, take a look
Yeah.
at your production, make sure your production's sound, make sure you guys have a good process around that, and you feel confident in it, and then work backwards from there. Work back into your sales. How does sales feed jobs to production? How does sales get leads? How are they processing those leads? Like Nic talked about, like it's not so much even where the leads are coming from as to how are you getting to those leads and how efficiently are you processing those leads through the system, right? So you work your way back to that, but start at production, figure that out, and then work back and solve all those other problems. And as you do that, you'll see opportunities to improve the process. You'll see opportunities to employ some tech, like, hey, maybe there's a better way for us to capture leads, like an instant estimator. Maybe there's a better way for us to write a proposal. Maybe there's a better way for us to do an inspection. There's tons of tools out there now, like endless supply, and it can get overwhelming at times too. But rather than trying to overdo it with all of
Yeah.
these tools, get the process sound, and you'll see where the opportunities are there. And like I said, then it becomes minor tweaks. Like, hey, we have a good process. Our sales process is great, but maybe it could be a little bit better if we automate something, or if we, streamline the way we quote so that we don't have to go back there to get a signature. Maybe we can get a signature digitally through an email, right? Like that's a major time saver, right? Like I know I talked to a guy one time that said, I spend one day a week driving 350 miles back to houses that I've already been to try to round up signatures on contracts.
Yeah.
Right. Like he's losing an entire day to tracking down signatures. Imagine him employing digital signatures. He took what it took him an entire day, and he could do other things with that day. Like he could go run more appointments. He could manage a job, like a production job, right? So there's just so many things that we can figure out once we have it all down on paper and we look at it and we streamline that process, So that's the big one for me, is if you want to scale, make sure it's sound first, right, Nic?
Yeah, and one of the other things that I won't go, everything I want to say you just said, which is perfect. We're like so aligned there. But one of the things I will mention is having that process really helps with forgetting things. I forget things all the time, especially if you're a business owner, you're wearing 16 hats. So you're looking at every situation here, like what needs to be done, what am I missing, what am I forgetting? And if you have a process in place that has automated to-dos or missing parts in your flow where it's visually like A prime example is the Roofr jobs board. When you have a job and you have a measurement in it, but you haven't had a proposal, there's a glaring blank spot where proposal is, where you're like, oh crap, that's right, I need to add a proposal. Having those processes in place will make sure that you have the luxury of forgetting things, because the process is going to remind you, whether through automation or just a quick glance. That's what's going to streamline it, and you're going to be able to kind of live your life a little bit better, knowing that, like, not running around. I was doing it the other day, just like, oh, what am I forgetting? I'm forgetting something. Now you don't have to do that. It's just so much easier.
Yeah, and I think that it speaks to just how much that can do for your business, right? Like
Mhm.
it just and not only for your business, but for you, personally. Like it can help you personally as a business owner, as a manager. Like it's just going to do so many things for you to facilitate how your daily operation goes, right?
Exactly.
Um, yeah, I think this is a great quote. And Edgar, the process that I would recommend is kind of like what we walk through here. Like put write it down on paper and kind of figure out, like, think of it from a customer standpoint, Edgar. Like how would you go through, like what would you want to experience as a customer, right? Like what would make sense? Like if I was to call you, if I'm the customer and I call you and that starts the process, where do we go from there? What happens and how do you figure out what makes sense for the customer? What would be a great customer experience and work from there. Like that's a great starting point. If you don't really have a sound process in place, think of it from a customer standpoint and what would you want to experience. And then that's a great like foundational piece. And then you can kind of build off of that. The process, I don't know that there's any like magical process, right, Nick? I think
No,
that,
I think every situation deserves a different process. So Edgar, like,
yeah,
find out what your ideal situation is for your area, your company, your size, your customer base, and try to map it there. There's a lot of tools that can work with that. And Edgar, I'm happy to do a demo with you and just dig into it with you and see
yeah,
where we can help
absolutely.
out, because that's by the way, meeting link up at the top of the chat. But that's a good way of, like, kind of figuring out, but it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, and I love this. This is back to a Styles quote here, but no tool can force a process on your team, right? Like there's no tool that you're going to put into place that's going to fix a process that doesn't work, right? Like it's going to essentially be a band-aid that's eventually going to blow up in your face, right? Like it's eventually going to do like that story that I told about the guys earlier, right? Like they came to us at the CRM thinking, I'm just going to employ a CRM and it'll fix everything, right? Everything will just fall in the line because I put a CRM in place. And they realize very quickly, like, no, it's not the case, right? Like if I don't, the process doesn't work, the CRM's not going to work, right? And it's I
Exactly.
think somebody said earlier, the CRM is only as good as the process you put in place with it. And and that's the truth. So I think that don't rely on the tools. Use the tools to supplement the process. Use the tools to better the process, to streamline the process, to organize it more. Don't count on the tools to build the process. So, we're getting a little long here on time, and I just want to take a couple of minutes to shamelessly plug what we're going to be doing here at the end of the week. So we are going to, Nick and I will both be at RoofCon. So if you guys are in the area or heading to RoofCon, definitely hit up the booth. Asawa, if you know the booth number, if you could throw it in there, because I don't off the top of my head. But definitely come see Nick and I. Love to chat with everybody, right? So stop by our booth at RoofCon. If you guys want to dive into this more with me, we are going to do a breakout session at RoofCon as well. So definitely come check that out. I'm going to be speaking up pretty much on the same topic, and just diving into it in a little bit more detail and really, like walking through how to build a sound process and how to utilize it to set the business up for success. And if you haven't got your tickets yet and you're on the fence about coming, definitely come. Lots of awesome stuff there. Incredible vendor count. I think Daniel said what, 240 vendors
Yeah,
there, like huge show,
wild.
like IRE big, right? At this point. And I think that, we've got some discounted tickets here you can see on the screen. And I think Slawa threw that in there as well. And one more plug, Roofer Mingler, right?
It's going to be so much fun. Yeah, like every time we go to one of these events, we like to throw a party in appreciation of you guys. So we call it the Shingle and Mingle party. So we're renting a bunch of bays at the Top Golf in Orlando. Come by. There's food, there's drinks, there's golf. We have a good time. It's like a really good, like not only just for fun, but like really good with networking and having this conversation with other business owners, suppliers, manufacturers. Shoot with them and find out exactly what they're doing that's different, that could be improving your process. And with that, you could sign up at our Shingle and Mingle right there. You can see Sawa put it on for the event. Sign up again, limited spots available. So if you're going to be in the Orlando area on Monday, please come, let us know. I have one more shameless plug after this. If you're going to be at RoofCon and you buy these 15% tickets off, and then you come to the Shingle and Mingle, book a demo at our booth. Pete, myself, Radford, TJ McCormick, the world's greatest roofer, and the entire team there, we're all going to be out there ready to talk to you guys, ready to help out with everything. And we would love, if you book a demo with us live, you get a really sweet Yeti mug branded with Roofr, which is sweet, but a really sweet Yeti mug, coffee mug that you could bring. That's a good traveler. So highly recommend that there too.
Yeah, I think you can actually even schedule those demos ahead of time if you want. I think Astawa just threw the link in the chat. So, definitely take the time to come see us there, guys. And if you're not going to be there, then definitely hit us up next time here on the Masterclass. We really enjoyed having you guys. And like I said, this is a really fun topic, specifically for me. I love talking about this. I could go all day here, but I got to get going. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us. And, definitely come see us at RoofCon. And if not, we'll see you on the next Masterclass. Thanks, Nic.
Thanks, guys. Bye.